And we welcome you in on a season wrap-up for Auburn Gymnastics with Tigers head coach Jeff Graba. I'm Andy Burcham. Third season for Coach Graba on campus and another step forward. And I know you always want to improve from one year to the next, but certainly a major step forward for your gymnastics program.
Yeah, when you look back, when you're in the middle of it, you don't really get to see what's going on very, very closely. But when I look back on it, I think it's arguably the second or third best year in the history of the program. So with a young squad and all the stuff that, all the growing pains we went through early on, it's nice to finish it up so successfully.
You talked about it in the preseason, how much hope you had for this team, and they had to go through some growing pains. I mean, you were on the road, it seemed like the first month of the season, and you did go through some growing pains early.
Yeah, and I think being on the road is the hardest thing to learn, first off, for an incoming group of freshmen, and it's a hard thing for the upperclassmen to communicate to the freshmen is how to compete on the road. But you know, in order to be really good at any sport, you have to be good on the road, because typically that's where the big meets are, the end of the season meets. Right. So we expected some growing pains early. We did get some, but I really felt like we grew up pretty quickly.
And by the time you were on the road, going to Florida, going to Alabama, to the SEC tournament, your team was road tested by that point.
Yeah, and what I like to see is we were in a lot of close meets and we never blinked. We were a really quality team, a real quality team all the way up until the end, and we handled the pressure really well, which, you know, if you look back on it, that bodes well for this team in the future, and it really says a lot to, you know, how quickly they grew up and how quickly they acclimated.
Do you get the idea that, like at an SEC championship where all the big guns were there and you still post the score, maybe in the back of the mind some of those folks are saying, gee, look what Auburn's starting to do with this program. We all of a sudden Auburn is a factor when it comes to this.
Well, I can't count how many people have told me that it's. I think part of it is that many people have said that they're surprised we've improved so quickly at this point with a young squad. But I also think that a lot of this sport's reputation, and you've got to go out there and do it every day, and you've got to prove that your team's capable, and I think that's what they did this year.
When you look at this team, and you've mentioned a couple times how young this squad was, did that part, the youth on this team, did it perform at the level that you wanted it to by the end of the season?
Yeah, I really felt like the turning point for us was about the fourth or fifth meet of the year, right around the Georgia meet, going into the Florida meet on the road. Again, we were on the road, and we needed to be on the road because I really felt like this group needed to get away from all the distractions. They're young, you know, school, all of that stuff was starting to pile up on them, and we needed to do a good job on the road, and they did. They gelled as a team, and we started seeing what we were seeing in practice. I think I was saying that a lot of the first half of the year is the squad we're seeing out in competition isn't who we're seeing in practice, and it finally came to fruition.
You played in front of some big hostile atmospheres. The kids didn't seem to blink at that point.
No. I look back and now that I look at, you know, how we were performing under those circumstances, you know, we got the highest road score, I think, in history in Tuscaloosa, highest SEC score, highest regional meet score. We start looking at those things, and those are some of the premier meets that you have to do a good job in, and our girls were performing.
What did it mean to get the home victory over a nationally ranked LSU team?
Well, it means a lot. First off, it means a lot to our fans because a win is a win, and a win against a conference opponent who's highly ranked, and their ranking held up. They finished fifth, and I still think that we're toe-to-toe competitive with all of those squads. So beating at the time number 6 LSU and also beating Arkansas twice was a big deal for us.
Go to the SEC championships held in North Little Rock, Arkansas. You score the highest score in school history. So you take momentum then into the regional where you're the number 3 seed at Florida. You put up a score that in every other regional, you're one of the 2 teams from that regional then going to the national championships.
Right. And unfortunately for us, I really feel like it hinged on our rotation at that regional. It's a notoriously difficult scoring rotation. It's hard to build scores when you finish on beam. And I think we all knew going in that was one of our best events, but it's hard to build. And we ended up getting the 3 seed on a tiebreaker with Minnesota. So it was that close. I do believe that we'd have been at nationals if we'd have got the other tiebreaker, if we'd have won the tiebreaker instead of losing it, or if we'd have been put in any other regionals. So, but that's why you play the game, right?
Took two individuals to the national championships, and both really performed very, very well for the Tigers.
Yeah, Caitlin was on fire. I mean, I think she ended up dinging herself a little bit, and we had to pull her out of the competition after bars, but she was on pace for a top 3 finish. Yeah. And for a freshman, that's a pretty big deal, and she got an All-American award for us, first one, I think, since '08, and I think the first freshman to ever get a first-team All-American. Really excited to see her perform up to her ability, and Bree did a great job. Her first year at nationals last year was a tough time. It was a tough adjustment, and she really settled down and did a great job this year. Finished top 20.
For Caitlin, as Coach mentioned, an All-American, not freshman All-American. She was named an All-American. She's the first since Julie Dwyer in '08 to do that, and the first freshman ever. I mean, you consider all the gymnasts that have come through this program. She's your first freshman who's also an All-American.
Yeah, and I get to coach her for 3 more years, so I'm pretty excited about that.
All right, let's talk about the program right now. As you mentioned, it was a young squad. I mean, you hate to say goodbye to your seniors, but the bulk of your squad now comes back, and they've had a season under their belt, so to speak. They know what it's like to go to a Georgia. They know what it's like to go to Alabama, the SECs, to Florida twice in a season. Coach, talk about the experience that they gain, and now how much do you expect? What are the expectations of that group as they come back?
Well, one thing I liked was we knew we had a large freshman group coming in, and we had a large sophomore group that had got some seasoning the year before. Right. They needed to expand their role this year in order for us to be successful, and I thought they did a really good job of that. We feel like we've got a large nucleus of experienced talent in that now going to be sophomore and junior class. We're looking to them to help get these freshmen on board quickly, to continue to expand their role so that we don't have to count so heavily on the freshmen, because it would be nice if they could get some time to acclimate rather than just throwing them into the deep end right away.
And while maybe this year surprised some in the gymnastics world with regard to Auburn, now you have to deal with expectations, because of this. Folks are going to know. I mean, Auburn won't be a surprise next year if the Tigers are successful.
Right, and I like that, because I would rather live up to expectations than surprise people with our ability level. So I do think that there's an increased amount of expectations out there. There's definitely an increased amount of expectations here, not just with the coaching staff, but with our athletes. Yeah. I think they're, like you say, when we beat an LSU at home, and when we, set all these records in these big meets, I think they're starting to recognize they're pretty darn good, and we better be able to duplicate that.
Of course, we're here in the McWhorter Center in the gymnastics practice facility. Coach, what goes on for the gymnasts now in the off season? What is expected of them now in the off season?
Well, now that Nationals is over, they've basically got a 3-week window where they're off. Many are coming back for both sessions of summer school. Okay. But we've basically shut the doors to a certain extent. Most of the girls, we actually have to make sure they don't come in for gymnastics because they're all perfectionists. Right. But they need to rest up. We've had a long, tough season. There's a lot of nicks and bruises these guys got to recover from, and they need to come back thirsty. So when they come back in the first part of summer school, it's open gym. We can't require anything from them all the way up until September, but it will be open, and it's really on them. It's basically, I like to term it as captain's practice. There needs to be some leadership on the team.
When we talked to you last year at this time, you were very excited about a freshman class coming in, and for good reason. They performed very, very well. You have an All-American out of that freshman class. All right, let's talk about your next freshman class coming in.
Well, right now we have 2 incoming athletes that have qualified to Junior Olympic National Championships. We're really excited about Cullen Halawick and Mary Jane Road. Mary Jane's from Minnesota and Cullen's from Houston. And we leave in a week to go up there and support them in trying to, I believe it's each of theirs 3rd straight trip to the Junior Olympic National Championships. So they're all-around athletes. We're bringing in all-around athletes with a lot of power and people who can still do bars and beams. So we're excited about adding more power to our squad.
Do you ask as much from this upcoming freshman class as you did from from this class that just finished its freshman season.
Yes, we're asking them to come in with the same anticipation and the same expectations that this last group. We tried to communicate that with this last group of freshmen, that we're going to need to lean on you pretty heavily. And we need to do that with this upcoming class, because even though we have a lot of experience, we've lost some numbers, some depth in our lineup. So, losing Petrina Yoke and Toy Garcia, they were capable of doing 8 routines for us at a pretty high level. So these girls coming in need to be able to replace those guys.
Congratulations on a terrific season. We look forward to your number 4 for you here on the Plains. War Eagle.
Thank you, War Eagle.
With Tigers coach Jeff Graba, I'm Andy Burcham on the wrap-up for Auburn Gymnastics.